Pacific FC step into the 2024 campaign in the Canadian Premier League after a very good 2023 season, but this will be off the back of an incredibly difficult offseason which saw the club lose multiple key starters from last year and arguably some of the best in the CPL. And this was an offseason that was the worst probably for any club within the Canadian Premier League. But this side is building off a very good season last year where they did manage a tally of 40 points, finishing in 4th place in the Canadian Premier League regular season, only 2 points behind the likes of 2nd and 3rd place sides in Forge FC and HFX Wanderers, respectively. But this was a Pacific side that comes off the island and did manage to come into the semi-finals, but did fall out and lose to the regular season champions in Cavalry FC. But albeit making the likes of the semifinals and finishing 4th in the regular season, this Pacific FC side had a very difficult run-in to the end of the season, losing 3 out of their last 4 matches, heading into the playoffs, which is obviously a mountain they had to climb, building up to a very difficult playoff run, which they did fall out in the semifinals. But Pacific has a huge mountain to climb this season, as many clubs have massively improved their squads, unlike Pacific FC in my opinion, who on the other hand have lost key amounts of starters and have undergone the most difficult offseason through any of the CPL sides. Pacific FC have lost monumental key starters from their 2023 season, as they have seen more key starters leave the club compared to any other CPL side, and it is very clear just looking at the semi-final against Cavalry FC last year, where Pacific FC saw 4 players who started that semi-final leave the club of this off-season, with those 4 starters being the likes of Manny Aparicio, Amir Didic, Kikuta Mane, and Easton Ongaro. Those were 4 significant players who played massive roles in Pacific FC's incredible season last year in 2023. As Manny Aparicio was of course a monumental piece in that Pacific FC midfield and why it ran so smoothly, alongside a young Canadian midfielder in Sean Young, as Manny Aparicio was able to play in multiple roles in the midfield for Pacific, but ultimately brought that creative flair to the heart of that Pacific FC midfield and that Pacific FC side, and really yet let Sean Young flourish in his young career at 21 years old last year. But Pacific FC saw a key departure as well on their back line, as well losing one of their best defenders in the CPL in Amir Didic, as Didic leaves the club as a top-level defender in the league, but also a player with an abundance of experience in the league, while mostly playing last season, tallying 24 starts in 24 appearances. A top-level CPL veteran who follows Manny Aparicio on both of their journeys to former Pacific FC teammates who are now new teammates at the likes of the nation capital in Atletico Ottawa, who have made massive additions this season. But Manny Aparicio and Amir Didic weren't the only exits this offseason for the likes of Pacific FC, as they lost 2 attackers and 2 key attackers in my opinion, in the likes of first being Kikuta Mane. Kikuta Mane, the American-born winger that brought lots of flair and excitement into the final third, as well as lots of experience at the top level of football, and not just the top level of the CPL football, as he had lots of North American football in him from the MLS, and it was a key departure as he had to move on. And there was a last key departure up top for Pacific, which was their number 9 in Easton Ongaro. The 25-year-old Canadian led the line for Pacific FC in that semi-final last year, but Easton was more of an asset off the bench with his physical presence of being 6'5". Pacific did manage to bring in one exciting player in my opinion, who I think is going to have an incredible year for Pacific if they look to move on and change this side from what it was last year. In a 26-year-old Canadian and BC-born winger in Dario Zanata, the attacker who has spent most of his entire footballing career so far in the Scottish Pyramid, playing mainly in the second division and second tier of Scottish football, but a winger who is looking to revive his goal-scoring form and his ability back in his home province in Canada in British Columbia. But with all the key exits in this Pacific side from last season, this squad is definitely in a difficult spot compared to last year and is definitely not in the same place as it was in 2023, but it still possesses some very exciting key players within this Pacific side that are filtered throughout all the positions, and some very exciting Canadians as well. Pacific FC might have had some key players leave the club last year, but currently have some very exciting players filtered throughout this squad and lineup, and for me, especially in net, with the likes of the young Canadian in Emil Gazdov, who is heading in to his third season in the Canadian Premier League, now at only 20 years old. After having an incredible season last year with Pacific FC, which saw the 19-year-old earn 18 starts last season, as Gazdov will be a key player this season and can single-handedly keep this side in matches throughout the season, in my opinion, as he's an incredible goalkeeper. And the Pacific back line is of course going to be headlined by the center back and Canadian himself in Thomas Jaguar, who now returns to the club in Pacific FC for his 5th season in the league with the side, as this Pacific FC will look to rely on his, of course, experience in the league and his ability this season, after losing some extremely key players further up the pitch, but most importantly, his center back partner in Amir Didic, who left the club, of course, for Ottawa. But Thomas Jaguar will be very exciting to see how he can do after losing Amir Didic and playing off his experience and his ability this season. But the Pacific back line is not just the most exciting part of this squad, as you gotta look to the midfield to see the most exciting player truly within this squad in the likes of Sean Young, who had a monumental season last year, as the Canadian, of course, will be sitting just in front of that back line, playing as the 6, but Young was incredible last season, playing alongside Manny Aparicio, one of the best midfielders in the league, but Sean Young was up there as well, as he did tally 7 goal contributions from deeper in the midfield, as he is a very versatile midfielder, while playing alongside Manny Aparicio, who let him be freed up more so and be able to play that kind of nicer free role, whether he wanted to play the 6 or the 8. Sean Young is very adaptable to being able to play those types of roles. But Sean Young also has some other top CPL pros alongside him in that midfield, in the likes of Stephen Yates, the Canadian, and Cedric Toussaint, the Haitian international, which are some very good pieces to be filtered alongside Sean Young this season. But Pacific SC has some very intriguing wingers who possesses all the ability to be able to create those chances and put the ball in the back of the net as well, as they have Josh Hurd, who is a very experienced CPL veteran, Adonijah Reed, Denario Zanata, the new comer to Pacific FC, and the most exciting option out of all of those wingers, in my opinion, is Ayman Salouf. But Pacific FC will look up to one of the key players in this squad, a big addition in as well up front, in the number 9 in Rion Moore. The Trinidad and Tobago international brings a lot of quality to this Pacific FC front line, possessing lots of those ways to put the back of the net, very variety and ways of scoring, not just a traditional number 9, but can put the ball in the back of the net any way you truly please, as Moore could be really that key to Pacific FC season and to solving all those goals that might have left this side in the offseason, and might be that key successive player alongside Sean Young in the midfield, who will be a key as well. A player who I'm looking forward to watching this season at Pacific FC will be Emil Gazdov, and that is why he will be my Young Player of the Year prediction for Pacific FC, as Gazdov is an extremely exciting goalkeeper, and being Canadian and coming into his third season in the Canadian Premier League at only 20 years old as a starter is extremely impressive. And what we saw from him in 18 starts last year for the likes of Pacific was extremely exciting as well. And Emil Gazdov gives me all the qualities that I can see in a goalkeeper who has the potential to go into higher leagues and has great potential. Because when you're playing as a goalkeeper, you have the potential to play into your mid-30s, and the fact that he is playing at such a high level at 20 years old, leading the Pacific FC side out last year to a 4th place finish and helping them play so well is very exciting, and I believe he has all the ability and the quality to be able to become a top level goalkeeper and keep on rising up his level and joining bigger sides and going to bigger leagues, because Gazdov has that ability, in my opinion, to keep this side single-handedly in games throughout the year and throughout this campaign. Because I don't believe this Pacific FC is going to have an extremely strong season. But I think Emil Gazdov will face a good amount of shots this year, and I think he will be able to prove to people why he will be one of the best goalkeepers in the Canadian Premier League this season. So that's why I think Emil Gazdov will be my Young Player of the Year for Pacific FC. There's one player on this Pacific FC side that I'm very excited to see this season, and it is not Emil Gazdov, who is of course my Young Player of the Year, but it is the midfielder in Sean Young, who was incredible last season, and I think will be again this year for Pacific FC, which is why I believe Sean Young will be my Pacific FC Player of the Season, and he is going to be set for a monumental year again, and a huge season to really prove himself. Many key players leaving Pacific, but most importantly his midfield maestro and partner in Manny Aparicio. Manny Aparicio, for me and for many other CPL supporters, was one of the best midfielders in the league, and being able to play next to Sean Young allowed him to be freed up, allowed him to play with a lot more flow and excitement to his game, but being able to have that freer role, and now without having Manny Aparicio next to him, will be a lot more interesting to see how Sean Young develops and plays on this season, not having that top level CPL professional and midfielder next to him. But last season, Sean Young had an incredible season, guys. We have to remember he was only 21 years old last year, where Young managed a season with 22 starts in 26 appearances, while also managing to score 6 goals and having 3 assists from a deeper role within midfield. But Sean Young is also going to have a season being the main man now in the midfield after, of course, the likes of Manny Aparicio left the club, which will see Sean Young take a much more important and crucial role within this side, and I think he will really take that bull by the horns, and which is why I think Sean Young will be the player of the season for Pacific FC. Pacific FC are definitely going to be a side that won't be anything close to what they were last year, in my personal opinion, but this is a team who I think could still push for a playoff spot, but I have Pacific FC in my predictions finishing in 5th place this season. And I think it's for many reasons, mostly because of losing a lot of key players, which I've talked about quite a lot this video, which I'll reiterate once again in Manny Aparicio, Amir Didic, who also joined a side who I think are going to contend for the title in Atletico Ottawa, and as well seeing Kekuta Mane leave, and Easton Ongaro leave to Europe. 4 key players leaving the club is never good for a side, and that'll be a massive change for Pacific FC. And this side I don't think has the depth or has the quality as some of the sides who I have in the 4 places higher them. Of course, Vancouver FC, who I have in 4th place. If you watch my season preview on them, I have them 1 spot higher, mostly due to depth. Coaching, as I think, is key on the sides who I have just above Pacific FC, and just a general squad that is built a lot better and a lot more solid. Yes, Pacific FC has some players who I think will be able to push them into that first round of potentially the playoffs in 5th place or 4th place, and that is why I have them sitting in 5th. I don't think this is a side that should be expected to push for the title this year or push for those top 3 places, but this is a side in Pacific FC who I think has some decent players filtered throughout that squad, in some players who I've already gone through in Emil Gazdov, Rion Moore, the likes of Sean Young, Cedric Toussaint, and just some great players filtered throughout their squad. But they just don't have a strong enough team, in my opinion, that they should be expected to go deep into this season and challenge for anything of significance, whether it's a Voyagers Cup, whether it's the regular season title, or whether it's pushing on winning the playoffs. I don't think this Pacific FC side has that in them this year, after losing so many key players and some top players that, of course, left to one of the best CPL sides, arguably now, in the league. So this Pacific FC side, for me, shouldn't be expected to challenge for silverware, should be expected to push for a playoff spot, that final spot in 5th, where I think they can nick it this season. Of course, right now, their season has started off great, getting a win over HFX at the time of recording, but I do believe the Pacific FC side will be fighting for that first round playoff final, where they could finish in 4th, but I have Vancouver FC finishing there. But I think Pacific FC will finish the 2024 regular season in 5th place. So let me know where you guys think Pacific FC season will end and where you guys think this side should expect to do this season.